Welcome everybody. I think we're just about got everybody joined now on the call. Yes, Lucy.
Okay, thank you. I will start by asking everybody to turn off their microphones, please. Okay, good afternoon everybody and welcome to the Network Rail and RIA SME and Tier 1 Engagement in Wales and Western Region events. We've got around about 200 people on today's call, so we're looking for active discussion, so please make best use of the chat function in Teams. Just pressing the little speech bubble up at the top if you're not aware of that. And we're really on behalf of RIA, we're really proud to bring in this event to you today. This is all about Network Rail really putting forward the fact that there is so much opportunity on the day-to-day going forward into CP7, and to really set the scene that opportunity with Network Rail doesn't necessarily mean directly with Network Rail, which is why we've got the Tier 1s involved as well. The Tier 1s we've got involved in the call later, Kate will introduce them in much more depth, but we're able to present that whole system thinking as well. It's not purely about civil engineering. So Network Rail has Tier 1s from across disciplines, and it's really important that we as a supply chain are aware of that. And I know that Network Rail's, Ben in particular, we're really keen to show that this is being hosted together. This is very much a collaborative event to emulate the collaborative nature of the Network Rail supply chain, so how we can all work together to deliver together. It's really important that we never ever forget the imperative and the drivers of safety, and then equality, diversity and inclusion. They're all such important standalone themes in their own rights, but actually they all apply just intrinsically to us as suppliers into that supply chain. So can we all keep that at the forefront of our thinking as well? And diversity doesn't just have to relate to our gender or our ethnic backgrounds, for example. This is about diversity of supply chain as well. We all have our own respective skills and experiences and qualifications to bring to the fore. So when we talk about EDI, we talk about it in the visible sense, but also in the technical and experience sense as well. So we're really keen, and that'll be picked up again in more depth to make sure that that is extolled and carried on through the entire discussion. On that note, I'm going to hand over to Kate. She's got an introduction to recording to make to you. Can I just ask everyone that you keep your cameras and your microphones off unless you're one of the speakers, and then Isabella will spotlight you during any Q&As if you choose to do so. Thank you very much.
Fantastic, thank you, Lucy. And again, just to welcome you on behalf of RIA. So this event is part of our Nations and Regions activity from a RIA perspective. As you may be aware, we've been sort of relaunching that as part of our sort of coming back in person after COVID. We were planning today to be an in-person event, but due to winter COVID levels, we took it online, and I have to say probably it's a good thing to have done that, because we have got about 200 people on the call. But for the Wales and Western region, we will be looking for volunteers to take part in a leadership group to help inform the RIA activity. So if you're interested in that, whether you're a RIA member or not, Isabella, my colleague, will put contact details in the chat, and you can join a meeting in the future where we'll be talking about that and listening to your views. But it's my pleasure now to introduce a video from Stuart Calvert, the Capital Delivery Director for Network Rail Wales and Western. Stuart's really sorry he can't be here today. I understand there's a senior leadership meeting for the Wales and Western region, and that otherwise he would absolutely have been here. But I had the pleasure of interviewing him yesterday so that he could share his views before we move on into the rest of the afternoon's agenda. So Isabella, if you could play the video, please. Stuart, thank you for supporting our joint RIA Network Rail Wales and Western event on SME and Tier 1 engagement. It's great to see you today, particularly because I know you're not available tomorrow, but welcome. The first thing I wanted to ask you about was just reminding people that you used to be an SME yourself, so maybe if you could just tell us a little bit about that and why this is important for you.
Well, thanks, Kate, and sorry to everyone I couldn't be there either in person or live. So really appreciate the opportunity to to join you with this recording, and I hope the event goes really well. I'm really sorry I'm not going to be able to hear Lucy speak or meet with a number of our key tier ones, and it's great to see Balfs and Colas and Siemens and Co Giffen, and I'm sure it's going to be a really, really good session. So you're absolutely right. Yeah, I did. I've spent about half of my career as a client and half of it as a supplier. And as a supplier, I've been in big global corporates, but I also ran an SME for 7 or 8 years. So I absolutely know what it's like being an SME working in the rail industry, and you know, really happy to talk about that and how it sort of influenced my thinking now.
And I'm conscious you've got 2 jobs, haven't you? So you're Director Investment Centre of Excellence for the whole of Network Rail, and then obviously Director Capital Delivery for Wales and Western. What are your priorities for 2022?
Well, my day job is Wales and Western, and that is about delivering all of our investment in Wales and Western region, from Paddington to Penzance, the whole of Wales, up to Holyhead and Pembroke. But I'll talk a little bit about the Centre of Excellence. I'll come back to Wales and Western. Centre of Excellence, I've been leading that for just over 18 months, but I'm pleased to say that I've been looking at that and working out how it can add most value, and the whole point of the Centre of Excellence is it adds value for all of us. It works with government, it works with trade bodies, it works with all 5 regions to help us be better investors. So it's the Rail Investment Centre of Excellence. But I'm pleased to say that we've appointed a new director for that. So I'm going to be stepping back and taking a sort of overseeing, chairing role of that part of the organisation. New directors are going to be announced very shortly. So my priorities in Wales and Western, which is my primary job, very, very simple. There are 3 things that we really have to work on improving. Safety. You know, we pride ourselves for a good safety record, but it's just not good enough. So safety and improving safety for everybody, whether working on the railway, travelling by rail, whatever, we've really got to improve that. The second one is diversity. We do not have anything like as diverse a workforce, and I say that not because I think it is the right thing to do, because I genuinely do, but also because it makes good sense for all of us, because that diverse thinking, the diverse challenge and diverse teams perform better. So it's right for so many good reasons, and underlying it's right for good business reasons. So we have to work together to improve the diversity of our industry. And the third one, and it has never been more compelling, is efficiency. We all know where we are as a country, we all know where we are as a globe, and we all know where we are as a rail industry. Before the pandemic, we wanted to drive greater efficiency into everything we do. After the pandemic, it is now absolutely essential that we account for every penny and that every penny is well spent. And together, we're only going to do that working together as client, government and supply chain. So those are my 3 priorities.
Fantastic, thank you, Stuart. I mean, as you said, there's lots of change happening across the industry, the creation of Great British Railways, for example. How are you going to make sure that we, you know, with that focus on efficiency, we don't miss, you know, the whole life value piece, and that we do get on and deliver effectively together?
Well, you know, there is a lot of change. There's always been change in the railway. I'm in my 40th year in the railway. You know, as with many industries, there's always change, but you know, we have some fairly significant changes. The key for us is we focus on what we're going to do, and we focus on delivering the outcomes we've got to achieve. I do not fear by having a real focus on efficiency that it absolutely doesn't. If you take the speed program I've been driving about cost and time, it is not about cutting corners, it's not about products, it's not about safety, it's not about cutting margins, it's about delivering the right job in the right time, efficiently, and eradicating waste. And if we eradicate waste, it's better for the taxpayer, it's better for the passenger, and it's better for the supply chain. So that's what our focus on efficiency is that every pound is well spent, and we jointly work together to eradicate waste.
Fantastic, thank you, Stuart. So the event today will highlight best practice, including examples of regional relationships that work well for Wales and Western. What do you see as the secrets of success, and what's your advice for the suppliers considering bidding for work in Wales and Western?
So let me talk about my role as an SME and how that's influenced me, and where I think best practice and where I've seen best practice. When I ran an SME, I had 1 or 2 direct relationships with Network Rail, but in the main, my relationships were with tier 1 suppliers, and they were the most effective relationships because you know, the real quality of an SME is its ability to be far more agile, far more responsive, and far more able to come up with quick, innovative solutions, as well as generally having specialist skills and specialist knowledges. And when I say that, that is not belittling the tier 1s, because the tier 1s have other huge strengths and huge capabilities, greater financial clout, good backup, and all those sort of things. And therefore, success to me is about a number of things. First of all, as a client, we are going to be really focused on being a client, being an intelligent client. That's the transformation that we're going to make, that we set out clearly what we want to do, and we have much better relationships with the supply chain. The success is then communicating that with tier 1, with tier 2, and having really long, fruitful relationship with open conversations between all, clear understanding of what the objective is, us being a client. So we'll set out what we need, we'll engage people on effective contracts, we'll have open, honest discussions about how we solve problems, and we will hold to account. So to be a brilliant, intelligent client, success means you need brilliant suppliers. Brilliant suppliers have a brilliant supply chain. And so, again, success for me is SMEs, and all the SMEs on this call, build a strong relationship with the tier 1s, because that is where most of your work is going to be. Tier 1s really understand the benefit you can get from smart, effective local SMEs. Everybody work together on having that really good understanding of what's required and how best you can deliver it, and don't be afraid to challenge if you see things that don't make sense, because otherwise we're not going to hit those 3 things of improving safety, diversity and efficiency.
That's very, very clear, and I love the sense that you have of like the SMEs bringing diversity actually into the supply chain and being agile and innovative, and you know, and hopefully today is going to be all about that relationship building between the different suppliers and Network Rail. So then finally, Network Rail is increasingly moving to thin client and enterprise models. You know, what does that mean for you in Network Rail, and what does it mean for the SMEs?
Okay, well, I don't like the term thin client, actually. I know it's a generic term, but I much prefer to talk about intelligent client. So intelligent client for me is a client that does what it says on the tin. It is a client. It is really good at saying, this is what we require. We will develop really good models where the suppliers can unlock their potential to deliver what's required profitably, safely and effectively. So the intelligent client is going to be really good at specifying. That's what we're going to focus on. We then recognise we're not any old industry. We work in a complex safety critical industry with huge range of different places we work at. I'm sat here in Paddington right now. Working at Paddington is completely different to working in Penzance. And the access we have, and I mean access in every sense, not just access to the track, but access to records, access to information, access to engineers. Our job is to give that access to make the supplier be successful. And then our other role then is to hold to account that delivery. So having an intelligent client or working in alliance or enterprise models is not about a sloppy, friendly relationship where everyone pats each other on the back. It's about being really rigorous in what your responsibilities are as a client and holding to account those who deliver. And the supplier's job in that model is to be a really good deliverer and delivering what they were contracted to do. So it's tough on us both, but far more rewarding and far more fruitful. So we'll focus on specification, decent engagement and assurance. We want our suppliers and the supply chain all the way through to be really, really good at delivering. And that means everything. Delivering safely, really understanding the safety regime, not cutting corners, delivering excellent safety performance. It means understanding how to deliver really cost-effective solutions that get the best value as quick as possible into the ground. And it means finishing the job properly, all the records, paperwork and everything handed back on time. If we do that, that's what an intelligent client model is. We'll be a client, supply chain, please be a brilliant supplier.
Last question, Stuart. What can you tell me about procurement timelines? You know, what are the big procurements that are coming up?
Right, so I'm really pleased to say that with you live today, I hope, is Patrick Benjura, who's going to run through the detail of that. But where we're at the moment, we're very advanced with developing our strategies for the closeout of CP6 and the whole of CP7. So we're very excited about the strategy we've got and the models we've got, and about how we're going to engage to address all, you know, to deal with all the things I've just talked about. But I'll leave Patrick to talk to you about the detail when he's with you this afternoon.
Fantastic. Thank you, Stuart. So any final remarks or?
No, look, my final remarks, I'm really sorry I can't be with you. We must meet in person because it is all about us having really good, strong relationships. I'm tremendously excited about the future for us in Wales and Western, all of us, and that's us in the supply chain, us as clients and us as train operators. I want to move to a different relationship, and that all depends on us working in the ways I've said. Have a great afternoon, and hopefully I'll be able to meet you all soon.
No, fantastic, Stuart, and look forward to meeting you soon in person, as you said.
Thanks very much. Thank you.
Okay, I think that was a fantastic chat there between yourself, Kate, and Stuart. Before we go on to the chat with Viper and the rest of the presentations, Isabella has some housekeeping for us.
Thank you, Lucy. Hi, everyone. Just some quick housekeeping for the event before we get going with like the main kind of agenda. So as Lucy said, so if you're not speaking or presenting, can you keep your cameras and your microphones off? It's just helps keep the screen clear. With questions, you can put them in the chat box or you can raise your hand during the Q&A sections. If you have questions to the Network Rail, we've got various members of the Wales and Western team on the call, so they can answer your questions. So you put them in the chat box as well, and the same goes for questions with the Railway Industry Association. You'll know at 4 o'clock we have the breakout room session of the event. So there's 3 separate breakout rooms. You'll have the joining links and the joining instructions that were sent out to you this morning and Monday. We'll also put the links for them in the chat so you can pick and choose when it gets to about 10 past 4. You can also move between the breakout rooms as they go on. They're all running simultaneously. They're meant to be a kind of workshop, kind of sit and learn. We've got some great speakers along for them. We also have a short comfort break scheduled in 4 o'clock, so that's your opportunity to get a cup of tea. And finally, we'll be sending out a feedback survey after the event, so please do take part in that so we can know what works well in future and how we can best deliver really great events for you, hopefully. So thank you, and back to you, Lucy.
Thank you. So before we bring you in, John, a little bit of a scene setter. I've just checked through the delegate list and we've got an amazing array of people on the call. Network Rail, lots of tier ones, lots of larger suppliers and lots of SMEs. For those of you who aren't aware, this is why I'm involved in the call today. So I chair RIA's SME focus group, and we're all about enabling and engaging and deepening that conversation between us and the wider SME section of supply chain, going up as the pyramid narrows towards our tier 1 clients and Network Rail, our ultimate client, but not our ultimate user. We must always remember we have a customer at the end of that journey, whether that's the passenger or the freight passenger, as it were. So on that note, I'm going to bring John in. John is from one of the SME member companies, Viper Innovations. We've got a number of questions that we're going to run through. But first of all, John, if you'd like to give us a summary of who Viper are and what you do, and I'll bring that back to a few questions and link them in as well to some of the comments that Stuart made. I think it's really important that we have that continuity.
Yeah, sure. I mean, we've in terms of what we've pulled together, Viper, there's quite a lot here that touches on what Stuart we're talking about. So we've been existing since 2007. We were originally set up to provide consultancy and project management support in the subsea market, but today we're a high-tech, innovative and disruptive SaaS model business. We still serve subsea, oil and gas. We've moved into rail and we're also in industrial sectors as well. And the company's growth has been aided really with the move toward exporting as well. So we've gone from being a small company delivering a service. We've grown really into a technology company. We now export 53%, I think, of our product, and we're now looking to sort of build that within rail. So from the point of view of our focus, our product range, our services tend to focus on your electrical assets, control systems, cables, switchgear, that sort of thing. And we develop innovative products and services that look at extracting best value, improving safety and performance around that. And as a company, we invest quite heavily in R&D and in people. Quite interesting talking about diversity as well, because I mean, through and across Viper, we've got diversity in every measure you could offer. But that's been done by pull, really. It's people wanting to come here. We invest in R&D, we invest in being a good place to work. And I think that diversity also comes back out of the products and the services we deliver. We've got quite a few products, innovative services, a lot of them award-winning across the piece, particularly VLIM, VLife, things like that, the really high-end stuff. That's the sort of stuff that whetted the appetite for Network Rail in the first instance. But at our core, we're really experts in subsea insulation, resistance monitoring, recovery, electrical cable and switchgear monitoring, and the sort of higher end, if you like. And the focus on R&D, we've now brought that to the rail industry. So we've been doing it for a good few years now, partnering with innovators along the way. And probably good to point out here that we've had massive support from Wales and Western. I think to anybody on the call at the minute, Wales and Western have always had a reputation for innovation and bringing innovation in.
I'll stay with Genting.
I think you'll be agreeing with me. So I think from that point of view, I mean, we've been blessed and we've enjoyed that benefit. But our product now, the thing that we're focusing on for rail is cable guarding, and that's what we're putting into the ground, and we have been doing for a while.
Okay, you mentioned it a few times there that you're building in rail, and you've only been active in rail a comparatively short time compared to the life of Viper. So first of all, how did you identify rail as a potential market, and how were those first early steps into the sector?
Yeah, and I think, well, from our point of view, it would be an obvious thing. We're looking to diversify. So we were in a single industry, although globally, and we were looking to grow fundamentally. And there's only so much growth you can extract from subsea assets. So we're looking at elsewhere where we could grow. We looked at rail as being an obvious place to do that. So when we sort of got into it and looked at sort of ways in which we could engage the market and show what we've got. And I think we started the rail journey back in sort of 2016, and I think we took a stall at one of the SIG events in Bristol, funnily enough, on this route. And the product range
was that SIG or RIG?
SIG.
SIG, thank you.
And we whetted the appetite of a few key players and a few potential sponsors with the product range that we got. So we got something tangible that could be seen. The functionality whetted the appetite, and we built up and we engaged with a group of people at that point to start to sort of look and see how we could take the technology that we've got and mould it into something that the rail industry could use. So that included a sort of good piece of work that currently, if you look at product acceptance and the way that works, this will be well before product acceptance. So we had a couple of years of work where we invested ourselves, and I think that's a key point to note to people here, is that we don't, as a company, we don't particularly rely on funding from other sources. We can fund R&D ourselves, and we can fund that development ourselves. It keeps us agile. But also, sort of a key part of what we do, the engagement aspect of it is critical. And having the tangible products helps, gets people interested, gets people looking at what we're doing. And then it sort of pulled us in, and we started to work together between us, between sponsors, between RAM and other groups to start to really flush out what the requirements were. So that collaboration, that openness, we're critically getting on the table. But we also did things like completely open client days, customer walkthroughs, where we allowed people to come down to the office and look at the products, look at the services, and really sort of get under the bonnet to allow us to sort of develop requirements.
So would you say then, picking up on what Stuart was saying about being the intelligent clients, having those open conversations, clear communications and specifications with suppliers, direct or indirect, would you say that was something you kind of preempted in that way by inviting the client in, or was it something that Network Rail were already conversant with?
I will think from our point of view, we preempted it. It's how we work. And I think, I mean, there were some key messages in the opener there that we firmly believe in. We have an expertise. We are deep experts in what we do. But at that time, we had no rail expertise. So, and previously, I mean, the developments that we've done in subsea oil and gas, similarly, we have an expertise in what we do, but we need to work and collaborate with the client to understand the need, understand the business, understand how things work, and really to develop a good set of requirements. I think there's been mistakes made in the past where people have sort of, you know, pitched requirements up, pitched theoretical requirements up, picked sort of an ideal set of requirements up. But what you're really looking to do is mould something and mould it over time. And we do that as part of our normal sort of custom practice. It's part of our DNA, if you like, to do that collaboration. So, but you've just said this last thing, you've got to be confident with that. You've got to be confident in your own ability, but you've also got to look through your client's eyes. And you've got to say, right, the client is actually the application expert on this. But also, one thing I would say is don't expect the client to be an expert in your field. So what you've got to do is you've got to have that collaboration, that sort of period of time working together to be able to flush out that understanding.
Yeah, I think that's really crucial. Again, to quote Stuart, he said we've got to solve problems, and quite often, I mean, John, you and I were on a call the other day where this very same experience was shared. You can sometimes have a client describing what they believe the solution is rather than defining what the problem is. But I wanted to go back to what you'd said about originally Viper didn't have any rail expertise in-house. Linking that back to the diversity point, do you think having a not, let's say, traditional or experienced rail perspective in the beginning of the journey actually helped because you're approaching it from new ways, perhaps?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, my view on life is that I mean, you can't ask what you've never seen. So you need diversity of viewpoint, diversity of experience to come in and help with that. And I think it is really where the SME market flourish and really what it provides a fantastic example of. In my various different guises over my life, I've always been a big believer in bringing SMEs in for that purpose. You get agility and you get a different viewpoint. I think one thing that Network Rail have done very well of late, particularly with the focus on the SME market, is about how they've brought them in and improved the trust in between parties, where you say, okay, yeah, I do now understand that this SME here, although they're an SME, they've got very deep knowledge, very deep experience in their field, in what they do. I'm going to listen to that now as a client. I'm going to listen to that, but I'm also now going to change the way I behave, and I'm going to start specifying things as outputs. I'm going to start specifying things as a need. I'm not going to try and tell you what to do. And what I'm going to say is I've got this particular problem. And I think in that first couple of years of our development, we went through an awful lot of that. And I think also how you approach it. Part of our normal development process is not really always about asking the person what they want. You can tease out what people need in lots of other different ways. But what I do think is tangibility is key in a lot of this. Because if you're in a situation where a client can't ask for something, if you can offer something that can be kicked, prodded, felt, and even looked at, you'll get a lot better feedback then from your client. But I think also you need to bring in a diverse spread of clients as well. And I think that's where the tier one is critical, because I think another good thing that we did across the piece is look at that end-to-end process and say, okay, we're bringing a product in now. In our instance, Network Rail are the end user of this product, but we're also acutely aware that there's different routes in to market in terms of how we deliver things. So we've got a maintenance user. So we've engaged really well with the maintenance user. The RAM have provided us with fantastic support all the way through. But we've looked at how our product might affect the tier one supplier. We've looked at how Network Rail might use a tier two supplier. And what we've done is we've made sure that we've built our product into OEM equipment. We've built our product into systems that the tier one might provide that then gives them a benefit. So we're trying to make sure that, okay, this might be a differentiator for you, for your signaling system.
On mute, John.
Oh,
There we go.
Someone's trying to jump me up.
Technology provider.
So, from that point of view, we've looked at what we've done with the tier ones, and we've looked at what we've done with the tier twos as well. In that respect, and OEM suppliers particularly, made sure that we fit. We fit in process, we fit in technology, but we also fit in terms of what their sell is. So we've got something now that fits into the bid process that can give a differentiator. We've fitted into the specification, the design, install, test, commission, and then in the use phase as well. And I think that's a good message to get across to people, that think wider. That diversity piece again covers competence as well, and make sure you think wider and where you fit, because a positive for one person might be a negative for another. You've got to understand that you've got quite a lot of clients actually in that space.
Your colleague Joanne, she's popped in the timeline animation that you and I were discussing the other day, which essentially shows your route to market, your journey to market. How did we've got that for everyone to look at and to refer back to. What are your key points from this whole breaking into new market and seeking product approval and building those relationships?
Well, I think first thing with product acceptance is, I think there's quite a lot of misconceptions around PA, and I mean PA these days is fantastic. I mean, in terms of from years and years ago when we first started doing with it, it's much more open, it's much more explicit. But people need to understand that PA is just there to enable innovation. It's not the person that's buying. It's not going to give you a market. It's just there to prove that your product is capable of going on the railway, working and delivering what it's intended to do. So from my point of view, all that early work, if you offer it against a PA process currently, it would be considered sort of to be around the challenge statement type area, where we did that early work and we got it up to rail industry readiness level 6, if you like, in that first couple of years. That got us into a position where we had something that we could fit on track. But all that early work, as we said before, the engagement with people, the engagement with wider groups, and all that knowledge and experience that we soaked up allowed us also to collaborate with the PA to create a really robust set of requirements. What we also did, again, it's that bit of empathy toward your client, and we made sure that we spent enough time getting to know each other and getting to know each other's capabilities, competence and knowledge, and seeing what we did together as a partnership, if you know what I mean. And what that did is it builds confidence. So, and confidence is key to this, and that's why we had, that opener for who Viper are, if you like, a few of the things I touched on there were all about offering that element of confidence in your abilities. So have you got the metrics? Have you got the outward signs that you can actually deliver what you're delivering? If you can then build that confidence up in your PA engineers, that then will feed into your RAM. It'll be a sponsor and everybody else that goes along with that, and it just makes things a lot smoother.
You mentioned competence quite a few times now, and that linking into confidence. There are quite a lot of terms that you clearly in Viper are very, very confident in this now very specialist market, and you're very, very well established player. I'm very conscious that this call it's a public event, so there may be people on the call who aren't yet working with Network Rail or its supply chain. So you've mentioned PAs in product approval, technology readiness level, rail industry readiness level, sponsors, RAMs, route asset managers, I can't remember what else. So a competence in its own right is just the language that we speak in rail. Any pointers on how people can embark on that journey?
Yeah, the language is everything, particularly if you're doing anything that in and around signal engineering, particularly. Just a wrong word here and there can put people off. But I think, we talked before, and I've talked in other forums about the 3 IPs. So the 3 cornerstones of everything you need: sponsorship, mentorship, and partnership. The mentorship aspect of that's key. Having people that can help you and give you the background knowledge and help you to sort of navigate the many labyrinths that the railway industry is. So I think that's critical to it. But there's plenty of hard information online. Network Rail themselves provide a huge set of resources, even down to sort of jargon busters and things like that. So if you go on the procurement pages of Network Rail, there's a lot of really good hard evidence that you can grab. But don't underestimate those 3 cornerstones. A sponsor is, it's a physical requirement anyway to get a product into the marketplace. But a sponsor's job is to navigate internally, to get you in, create the pull internally. to help unblock things and push things through. Network Rail can't provide mentorship because that will cut across commercial requirements. So get a mentor that can help and support you from outside, that can sort of navigate you around and make sure that you sort of know what you're talking about fundamentally. And then the final piece of that jigsaw is partnership. And partnership is across the piece. And you've got to approach things. And the more you approach things as a partnership with the client, with the tier ones, with the tier twos, the more you learn. So you'll come into this, and I think what I said to the SME market is be confident in what you bring to the party. So you've got an expertise that the railway potentially doesn't have and might very well want. So be confident in what you're bringing to it, but also listen and spend time, put the effort in to learn. And that might be a case of getting involved with RIA, certainly. I'm always a big advocate of that. But other areas where you can get involved to sort of learn, to network, to develop your knowledge of the lingo. So we also need to get people to understand the landscape, really, how the Network Rail is structured, how it works, how it buys, who the users are, who the client might be, who might have the budget. Because it could be somebody's got a budget but not the need, somebody's got the need but not the budget. So there's games to play within that. But at its heart, I think the railway wants to work with people, it wants to collaborate, so spend time, get to know it, and get to know the lingo that goes with it.
And would you say, can you witness over the years that you've been involved in this, that the way in which the tier ones work now with that wider supply chain, has it changed, and has it changed for the better?
Yeah, I think most things from a railway point of view, we like hard objectives, don't we? Yeah. And government setting the objectives, pushing down that you will use 33% of your market from the SME works. It's created objectives, it's created goals, people chase goals. Network Rail have embraced that, and they've pushed that down further. And I think that the supply chain has also picked up on it, run with it. I think that to get the big picture view of it, we see a lot more now in terms of the hard contractual stuff coming out. We're seeing a lot of engagement. I mean, you're seeing things like HS2. You're seeing a lot of the sort of tier one suppliers that are trying to supply into HS2 coming out and looking for SME partnerships. We've seen other areas where we Innovate UK and other things that are of that nature, where it's a forced collaboration, if you like, between a tier one and an SME. But I think all those things have been seeded the knowledge that you can actually use an SME as part of your overall delivery and get a lot of benefit from that both together. So I think there's been a lot of learning these last few years that's enabled a lot more trust, I think.
Absolutely. Just whilst we're talking about that point, just to make sure everyone's aware, if you look in the chat function just now, Ben King from Wales and Western, the SME Engagement Lead, he's popped in a link for how to become a supplier to Network Rail. And it really is worth having a sift around the Network Rail website. If you're not sure, they do have a jargon buster. They've got all sorts of different tools on there. It's a huge website. I'm glad I don't manage it. But picking up on what you just said there about objectives, and as you've been talking, the way that you've described how Viper work and how you bring your team on and that you inspire your team and because you're constantly innovating, it sounds like you have a really good staff retention. Would you agree that in terms of objectives that we're seeing come to the fore now, so for example, social value and decarbonisation, they've not yet been officially imposed down in tenders, but they are imposed on all public procurement? What would your advice be to smaller companies who aren't necessarily measuring that stuff, even though they might just intrinsically be doing it?
Well, that's a good point. You find that a lot of things that you will be measured on in bids and things around that, but you might be doing it anyway. So it's a good idea to sort of flushing that out. There's a lot of support in and around. Again, Network Rail website, the procurement part of the website's got loads of really good stuff on it. But getting out into the wider, I mean, if your local LEPs, your local authorities are providing all sorts of support, your institutions are doing the same at the minute. I mean, it's something we invest in, but we've also tried to do something that sort of fits within our DNA, if you like. So we've purchased a large swathe of land down in Somerset, and we've done that to try and create a fully carbon neutral company from where we are. And but we've also, I mean, part of that is about innovation around carbon capture as well. We'll be doing a lot of innovation and we'll be supporting a lot of science to be done around that bit of land. So it's going to be useful land that pulls something out for you. And I'd encourage you to think around that. Also, think about that sort of how does your corporate social responsibility fit your corporate DNA? What are you doing as a normal piece? And I think the bigger picture about being a good place to work, one thing that innovators tend to migrate toward to SMEs, because they're a more agile place to work. You get involved with a lot of different sort of work. So I think you've got a lot going for you in the SME market, but just get an understanding of what it means. And part of the bidding process, again, that collaboration with tier ones. There's a lot of people in tier one organisations that thoroughly understand CSR, that thoroughly understand the environmental requirements, and they'll support you. I mean, if you can develop that relationship, I think everything, in my mind anyway, my view, everything about the railways is about relationship building.
Yeah.
You've got to have something worth selling. You've got to have something that ticks the physical boxes, but you're going to create the longevity by having those open relationships with companies all across the piece, and you'll learn from that.
Yeah, that point you make there about what's in your DNA as an organisation, as people within that organisation, and that absolutely works. It almost dovetails you with your larger clients. The further you go up, the more you're sharing those common points of interest that you actually believe in organisationally. It helps smooth that journey as well. We're going to hand over shortly to Patrick, but what I wanted to point out, Patrick's also just raised a question in the chat function, which had a lot of immediate thumbs up. And I'm pretty confident this will happen. I know both Jason and Dan are very switched on in this respect. But if tier ones, not just today, but in general, were able to signpost how smaller companies can become a supplier into them. So guys, if that's covered later in your presentations, fantastic. But yeah, also call to arms for any other tier ones that are on the call. If you're not already, please make it obvious where SMEs can start knocking on your door. So we've got a minute left, John. Are there any closing remarks you'd like to say? Any specific points you'd like to pull out?
I think the key thing is go back to that PA is an enabler. We do tend to get
acceptance.
So product acceptance is an enabler, and it's not a guarantee of sales. You're in it for the long term if you want to get involved in rail. You need to commit to it, and don't expect everybody to be knocking at your door just because you've got a product accepted product. So take that as one thing moving forward. There's a lot of work to do afterward, but it's worthwhile. Equally, getting involved in rail is worthwhile. It's still the biggest untapped factory in the world for a lot of people to sort of get involved in, and there's huge opportunities for tech transfer that's yet unexploited.
Fantastic, thank you very much. That is a perfect segue now to bring in our next speaker, Patrick Ben-Huyer, who is Wales and Western's procurement for Network Rail. So over to you, Patrick. Thank you very much. Thanks, John.
Thanks very much indeed, and thanks for that, John. Really good talk. Can you all see me okay?
Yeah, that's fantastic. Thank you, Patrick.
Yeah. Excellent stuff. So if you wouldn't mind going to the first slide. So really excited actually to be here. Apologies from David Hughes, who's meant to be doing this slot. David Hughes, as you probably, or some of you may know, is the head of procurement for the region, Wales and Western. I'm essentially his deputy, although not in my title, but nonetheless I'm his deputy. So I'm here today to talk to you all. It's really, really good to see so many people on the call. Really pleased about that. So it's just basically one slide I'm going to talk about, predominantly about the procurement and what we're thinking about doing and what that means to tier ones and SMEs in the Wales and Western region. So literally just before, about an hour before this call, I was in the procurement executive panel meeting, at which we looked and reviewed at some of these strategies and papers that we have with regards to what we're going to do in CP7 and how we're going to tender it, what it means for the supply chain. So it's really, really timely, actually. So I think most of you, or some of you, will be aware that we've undertaken ahead of landing on a strategy for CP7 in the region. We did do some soft market engagement, so that's already been undertaken. Some of you hopefully will have received, or many of you have received, a questionnaire sent out via Seeker. And I believe we also had a supplier engagement session back in November 21. And there might have been some sessions in January, but I'm not sure. I wasn't involved in that. So in a nutshell, what we're looking to do in CP7 that's slightly different than previous arrangements in CP6, for example. We're going to predominantly be engaging with Tier 1 suppliers directly and award frameworks for CP7 and possibly the first 2-3 years for CP8. We'll be awarding 8-year frameworks with a view of doing 5 years plus one as options, assuming the frameworks turn out, which I'm sure they will. We're absolutely not precluding SMEs in that engagement, insofar as that be really good actually as part of the participants in the CP7 framework tenders when they come out, and I'll go through timelines in a minute. It'd be really good to see if some of the SMEs would want to get together in some kind of collaborative forum or JV of some description to bring some of their really valuable experience into the mix and possibly tender for some of the packages. And CP7 across the region, we're going to have various lots to do different kinds of work. So in buildings and civils, for example, signalling, all that kind of stuff. It's a really exciting time. Loads of work going on in CP7 and early CP8. Probably about 1 to 2 billion just in buildings and civils alone. And it's important to note that we're not doing this kind of framework for everything. So, for example, the BAM and CAM frameworks, so the buildings and civils frameworks that we've currently got for reactive and non-complex work will continue for now until 2024 with a view to replace them with something similar. So we're not necessarily, going for Tier 1s for everything. But that's the intention, and I think Stuart touched on it in his opening remarks, is that we want to have generally fewer suppliers to be able to manage, because our industry and our company is changing. The amount of resources we've got to do the number of events and manage the contracts is changing, so we need to think differently going forward. Really good to see that there's some Tier 1s later on in the presentations, having a talk about how SMEs can get closer to them and have an involvement in rail. And totally agree with John earlier saying that there's lots of things going on in rail. Really exciting time to be a supplier in rail. So yeah, really exciting time. So time frame wise, the aim is to issue a PIN in March this year, with an ITT going out on or about June, and the aspiration is to award the new frameworks in December this year, obviously ahead of CP7 actually starting to get things going. So yeah, really important for me. I totally get the value of SMEs and the diversity, the new thinking, just the sheer energy they bring to the table. So really don't want to lose that. And the way to do that is either through directly with Network Rail, but if you can't do it directly with Network Rail, through the Tier 1s and other avenues. So important for us in Network Rail to have a diverse supply chain. We do recognise that some of you guys out there in your companies have very niche knowledge that we need in the railway. And as I said before, it's just in buildings and civils alone, you're looking at 1 to 2 billion between CP7 and the start of CP8 to spend, and you've got all the other disciplines as well going on in the region as well, such as signalling, for example. So we're looking for more collaboration in CP7. That's true for us in Network Rail, because we could be more collaborative than we have been in the past, but also the Tier 1s and SMEs collaborating with each other more effectively, potentially. I think you probably do a lot of that already more effectively than sometimes we do now, which is great. Be really good to build on that so that we can keep Tier 1s and SMEs going and working on all our projects and programs. We will continue to engage with SMEs via these RIA discussions and forums and presentations and sessions, but also through Seeker, Rail Midlands Forum, etc. So there's a wide variety of ways that we can still engage with you. And the final point I wanted to make before, I don't know if you want to ask questions, maybe later, but there are still opportunities for SMEs to also directly engage with other parts of Network Rail through the route businesses. And what I'll try and do, not during the chat necessarily, but later on, possibly via RIA, is to try and send out a link to where the forward look ahead is for other regions and routes, so that you can get involved in that as well. The other thing I wanted to say, and to recognise really important going forward, is that we haven't been great at doing this necessarily in the past, but we're really committed to doing it in the future with our tier ones especially, so that they can filter that information down to the SMEs and their supply chain partners, is to give an accurate as possible look ahead of what's coming up. I must admit today we haven't been great at doing that, so we need to absolutely get better at doing that, so that the tier ones and SMEs can plan their resources and where they're going to put their effort.
No, fantastic. Thank you, Patrick. That was really helpful. And I think, as you've acknowledged there, visibility of pipeline and what works coming to market is always one of the biggest questions that we get. What I thought I might do now actually is ask if Ben King and Ruby Mawaha are still on the call. If you could just turn your cameras on for a moment and introduce yourselves, because I'm conscious that not all the SMEs on this call will have met you. Some of us have the pleasure of talking to you quite a lot and working closely with you. But yeah, if you wouldn't mind just sort of introducing yourselves, and then perhaps we'll take some questions from the attendees. So Ruby, do you want to go first?
Thank you, Kate. So good afternoon, everybody. My name is Kamaljeet Kaur Marwaha. I'm more widely known as Ruby, and I am the Commercial Director for Capital Delivery Wales and Western. I was appointed towards the end of last year. I'm taking over from John Spencer, who worked in this position for many, many years. So I have a tough act to follow, but I'm up for it. What I don't want to do is bore yourselves, because a lot of you do attend the supplier call. So I want to talk about myself a lot, but I am really passionate about the SME agenda. We understand. And I think just to build on what Patrick has said, for our CP7 strategies, we are looking at embedding the construction playbook policies as much as we can, the longer term strategies, longer term contracting, early supplier involvement, all really important for us. And now it gets very tricky for us to embed the SME within that strategy. And this is where we are going to be looking at our tier one suppliers to cascade that downwards, because you're very right, innovation comes from the SMEs. And also when you look at social values, we have a large geographical area in Wales and Western, and we really need to get to the heart of, getting the SMEs involved in Cornwall, in North Wales. Really, really important for us and for, sustainability and social values. I haven't really prepared a lot to say, but the message is clear. We value you all, really important for us. So I think it's something that we are going to be discussing is, once we are in a position to award the frameworks and during the tendering process, the whole evaluation of the SME involvement, and post that as well. How do we launch them so that there's transparency and involvement? Thank you.
It was something I meant to say, apologies. We are going to the intention is for us to make everyone aware, the supply chain aware, SMEs included, of the documentations that's going out in the tenders. Even if you're not involved, you'll be able to see the information, so you can see the sense of the scale and the locations of where we're planning on, doing things. So that's really important. We're going to be transparent and share that information. Thanks, Ruby.
Cheers.
Thank you, Ruby and Patrick. And Ben, do you want to just introduce yourself as well?
Yes, hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Benjamin King, Supplier Manager within the Wales and Western region. And also the SME champion for the region as well. So hence why I've been working alongside Isabella and a few other colleagues and our tier one partners as well to help organise this event today. So yeah, and also as well, I just sort of help run our different events and engagements for our supply chain throughout the region as well. So one of the things I'll be sharing shortly is just a note, we have a 4-weekly supply chain call that we run, and that is open to all suppliers that currently work within the rail industry, or currently work for tier 1 suppliers as well, or have an interest of working in the rail industry, where we share a lot of good information on there as well. So I'll be sharing that shortly as well. But and I'll also share my contact details if anyone wants to get in touch as part of me being the SME champion for the region as well.
Yeah, fantastic, Ben. And I think we've got time just for one question, and actually, Ben, I think it's for you, because it's how will Network Rail ensure that you meet that target of 1/3 of spend going to SMEs?
Yeah, so there's a number of things we do really. So one of the things we've got is the SME action plan that we're working towards, and that's available on the Network Rail website. But and the second thing is as well that we're doing and we're working towards, that we're tracking the spend that we put through our tier 1 supply chains, so that we make sure that the spend that we're putting through our tier 1 suppliers is being spent appropriately and is going towards that SME market. So we monitor that through a system called SID currently, and we're looking to try and get better at tracking that spend as well. So I'm working with Ken Blackley. He hasn't joined today, but he's sort of the Network Rail lead for that project. So we do monitor the spend that does go through our tier 1 supply chain. So that's how we do that.
No, thank you, Ben. And just for anyone who's not familiar with things like the construction playbook that Ruby referenced, so basically the Cabinet Office and the government has policies on, what procurement policy is, and what the rules are for SMEs, for example. So often these rules around social value or target spend on SMEs come from government, and then Network Rail apply them. Patrick, question for you, which is about the timelines. Could you just repeat the timelines on procurement? And I think you did say that you would give us a link that we could share after the call as well.
Yeah, sure. So at the moment we're thinking starting to engage in the proper procurement process March this year with a PIN, followed by an invitation to tender in June, with a view to award in December. So it'll mean that we'll get into contract quite a bit ahead of when we actually need it, which is good, because we can start, forging relationships, and the tier 1s will be able to do some more of this kind of stuff, I guess, engaging with SMEs ahead of when we actually need it, which is really, really important, I think.
No, absolutely. So I'd just say thank you to all of you. We will share the videos after the event, and we'll share the links. As lots of people have said, do have a look at the Network Rail website, because there's lots of information on there too. Now, if I can ask Chris Fletcher, Procurement Manager for Rail Systems from Balfour Beatty, to turn on his camera, and we'll start with our tier 1 presentations. So hi, Chris, really good to see you today.
Hi, good afternoon.
So if you want to sort of introduce yourself, and each of the tier 1s are going to speak in turn, and then we'll have some Q&A discussion after that. So Chris, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Afternoon, everyone. I'm Chris Fletcher. I'm the Procurement Manager for Balfour Beatty Rail Systems. I've been with Balfour Beatty now for about 14 months. I've worked in procurement in construction my entire working career. I've worked on Highways England contracts and local authority contracts, so quite well versed in engagement with SMEs and the importance of it. I'm going to just run through a few slides with you this afternoon around the SME spend, our onboarding process, just talk you through what our requirements are and what you need to do, how we engage with the supply chain, in particular with SMEs, our e-procurement tool that we use, and finally just a slide on the supply chain sustainability school. If we can jump onto the next slide, please. So this slide just shows the overall spend within Balfour Beatty Rail with SMEs over the last 12 months. So as you can see, we've got 55% spend with SMEs, which, from what I've seen in other organisations I've worked in, that's a real good figure. So it's something to be proud of, but doesn't mean we're resting on our laurels. We still want to improve on that. You can also see on the next pie just how that breaks down. So 17% is with small companies. Oh, sorry, if you can go back just on the right-hand pie there. 17% is with small, 9% is with micro, and 29% is with medium, and then the 45% is with large non-SMEs. So like I say, those are real good figures. If you can jump onto the next slide, please. And then this just shows the breakdown between subcontract spend and purchase orders. So we've got 67% SME spend, which is by a subcontract supply chain, and then 39% with purchase orders, which would be suppliers and plant hire companies. So again, good numbers, but probably a bit more to do there with regards to the purchase ledger type suppliers. You can jump onto the next slide, please. So just to talk you through our onboarding process, we partner with Construction Line, and obviously we use risks as well for the trackside works. We're also a member of Build UK, which hopefully you're all aware of those people. You can jump onto the next slide, please. So this just shows you what our minimum requirements are for working with ourselves. I'll run down these. So for suppliers, like I said on the slide before, Construction Line is our preferred method for approval. We ask for associate level of Construction Line. For consultants, again, it's associate level. Subcontractors, we asked for gold level. And then if we're working trackside, then it would be the accreditations that I've just run through, plus risks as well. We do work with you to help you get through the process. We don't just leave you to it, but those are our minimum requirements that we do stick to. But like I said, we can help you. Just jump on to the next slide, please. There's a bit missed off that. So we use Construction Line as our preferred method to assess the competence of our supply chain. The one thing I will say about the Construction Line, it isn't just a box ticking exercise. From the point of view of a procurement team, Construction Line is a really important resource. It helps us find suppliers and subcontractors. It also helps us engage with SMEs and local supply chains. So it's a real good tool for us when we're particularly working in new areas where we can source local supply chain and engage with them. So you know, if you're not signed up to it already, don't think it is just a box ticket exercise. It is something that we do use to engage with the supply chain, and Construction Line can help with things like meet the buyer events and things like that. So again, it's a real good resource. Next slide, please. Oh, there's the pyramid. If you can jump on. So as I said, you know, you're not on your own when you go through the approval process with ourselves. Construction Line have helplines and support staff that can help you through the process. We have a dedicated account manager as well, Natalie Hart, that's listed in black, whose details are in the left-hand corner there. But we do work with you as a business, so you know, if you are struggling or you're not sure, then we will work through the process with you and help you get the support that you need, but also make sure that you're aware of what other support's out there from ourselves and from Construction Line and other areas as well. Next slide, please. So one of the other items we look at when we're bringing people on board is financial stability. Clearly, we want to make sure that we work with companies who are stable, but also, you know, we can work with you as well to help you out if we need to look at payment terms, things like that. We can work with the supply chain to ensure that you're in a good position, and if you are having issues, that we can work through those with you. So again, you're not on your own. We will work with you through any issues you may have. We can go to the next slide, please. This is around engagement. So we do a lot of work with the supply chain, and as you can see, a lot of our supply chain is SMEs. So we'll help you through the pre-qual process, which I've just mentioned. We use various portals for tendering. So we use Compete For, we use Sell to Wales. As I mentioned earlier, we'll use local meet the buyer events and Construction Line would like to help us engage with local supply chain. Our health and safety team work closely to deliver daily briefings, boots on the ground. We have what we call a SHOUT meeting, which is a safety, health, environmental leadership team meeting. And at project level, we do involve the supply chain in those. So again, you're involved in those meetings, and you'll get to contribute to them as well. Obviously, we're doing a lot of work at the moment with regards to sustainability. So we work closely with the supply chain on some of the points you can see listed there below, but we're also organising supplier days to run through sustainability and again help you through any issues you may have with regards to that. Some of the training that we've delivered over the last 12 months, some kind of items there that everyone is hopefully aware of for the last 12 months. So we've helped supply chain through DRC, which is domestic reverse charge, IR35 and Brexit, which is ongoing, particularly if you're sourcing materials from outside of the UK. Part of the SHELP meetings and the work we do with our SMEs and our supply chain is around sharing best practice. So we'll get groups together, we'll talk through what we're doing as a business, but also I find what works really well is when you get a group of subcontractors or suppliers in the room, we'll start talking to amongst themselves, and that's where best practice does get shared, and we get some real good benefit from that as to the supply chain. We also can help with regards to employing graduates and apprentices and trainees, and we also hold supply days, as I mentioned earlier, and volunteering days. Jump on to the next slide, please. We use an e-procurement tool for certainly most of our tendering. So we will issue tenders out through the e-procurement tool. You'll get a login, all the information shared on there. You can ask questions through the portal. We can answer, and we can also issue out any further information required. We also use this for our supplier performance management. So we will carry out the scoring, if you like, of the supply chain, and we do share that with the individual suppliers just to talk through where they are. If there's any issues, we'll work through them with you. And again, sharing good practice. So that's a real key item for myself of working with the supply chain, but also making sure that everybody knows how they're performing, but also how are we performing as a business. There's e-catalogues on there, which speeds up some of the material procurement process, and we also get a lot of information at the back end with regard to spend data. Jump on to the next slide, please. I won't go into too much detail on this because I think the Supply Chain Sustainability School are actually here today, but we are a member of the Supply Chain Sustainability School. If you could just jump on to the next slide, please. There's a list of some of the members. So you can see it's certainly well used throughout the industry. We've got a good mix of suppliers, tier ones and ultimate clients there as well. So really well bought into. If you can just jump onto the next slide again, please. And these are some of the topic areas that you can look at. And for me, it's a real good resource to help you develop your businesses, particularly around sustainability. There's some good information on there, and it's something that we really do push for our suppliers to get involved in with regards to kind of helping them progress and grow their businesses. And lastly, if you can just jump onto the next slide, this is contact details for our supply chain manager called James Mason. I think the slides are going to get shared around, but I'll also just put my contact details on the chat so anyone can give me a shout if you've got any questions. And that's it for me. Thank you very much.
Fantastic, Chris. That's really helpful. And as you said there, rail is a safety critical industry, isn't it? And there are lots of requirements and standards and things. But as you say, also lots of free resources to help. And we have got speakers on social value, product acceptance, and risks sort of later on this call. So next I'm going to ask Andrew Bailey, Bidding and Business Development Director, and Satya Panchataram for Colas Rail. If you turn on your cameras and introduce yourselves, please.
Hello, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Andrew Bailey. I'll take you through the first couple of slides, and then Satya, who's our procurement manager, will take you through the remainder. So if you could move on to the next slide, please. So I think it's really important that when we're talking about anybody that's working with us, that we work on a safety first principle. So one of our key priorities is to make sure that if you're part of our team, that you behave in exactly the same way that we'd expect from for our own employees. So they're free to be safe, And one of the campaigns that we're running at the moment is no matter who you are, you have the ability to stop work if you don't think that what we're doing is safe, or you see something that isn't being done correctly, and to just step up and challenge what we're doing. So I think I just wanted to make it absolutely clear that to be a supplier to us, you have to sort of buy into our ethos as to how we behave as an organisation. There is also some great things within the documents that, or some of the processes we have. So we have a thing called a Carl Safety App. Now, in a lot of places that is just to do with safety, but we've started to innovate on that and actually put a section in there for innovation. So if you're part of the team and you think there's a better way of doing it, then we're augmenting that tool to make sure that we can allow people, from whether you're within the supply chain, whether you're in the client organisation, or whether you're in the company ourselves, to be able to start those conversations about innovating and improving what we all work in our industry. So if you could move on. So I thought it just helped. We're centering today on the Wales and Western regions, but it's probably quite worthwhile just to point out that there's quite a lot of opportunity across the organisation. Lundy Projects, if you didn't know, was a Colas Group company. We're a national freight operator as well, and we also operate plants and equipment. So the ability to supply, and especially for SMEs, into some of those specialist niche services cover across the whole piece. And then if the other one in the Midlands, as I say, you've probably seen Midland Metro, so that we're one of the principal alliance members within the Midland Alliance, building Birmingham Tram, and again there's lots of work there. But if we move on, and I'll centre on the region we're talking about today. So as I just said, the South Rail Systems Alliance, we work in collaboration with Network Rail and AECOM. It's an ISO 44000 accredited project which we achieved last year. So that's the big scheme. And for example, within the region, we delivered Bristol East. That was about 58 S&C units were recovered, 50 new ones were remodelled. And I think the important thing is not to think about it just being track. Think about it also that we had site facilities, lighting, mission rooms, dust suppression, CCTV, catering services. So there's a very wide and broad supply within each of these projects that are all part of the cog to make it all work. Within specifically the Western region, we're also on the S&T framework. We're building level crossings, we're renewing assets, and we're extending the assets of the network. So there's a vast array of project work that we do there as well. And as I said, also we cut through the region with freight haulage, infrastructure monitoring, the rail treatment, railhead profiling, and also with the tampers, grinders, millers. So as I say, the specialist support service that help us maintain the large items of plant and equipment you can see operating in the pictures. So if you could move on. So Sathi is going to sort of take you through some of our procurement specific and our spend. So I'm going to hand over to Sathi now, but if there's any questions on that, please don't hesitate to ask.
Hi everyone, Satya here, procurement lead for Colas Rail. So I just want to point everyone to the top left-hand side pie chart, which gives how Colas Rail has actually spent our expenditure with the external suppliers. So if you look at the split there quite clearly, out of 100%, 74% of our spend last year actually spent with the SMEs. So I'm talking about roughly around £160 million worth of expenditure. So that kind of gives you how serious we are on working with SMEs there. Also on the top right-hand side again, sorry, the supply chain, our active suppliers within Colas Rail. So we have roughly around 410 suppliers, active suppliers right now, and within that we have had new entrants, about 45 suppliers come on board. So we have a greater responsibility here. Obviously, we have to deliver what we promised to our client, and also not compromise our delivery standards and safety standards. We also want to give opportunity for the new suppliers. So that percentage there, if you look at it, about 10 to 12% of our new suppliers come on board and who's working with us, and most of them are SMEs at the minute. And also I want to take you through the chart below, just to give you an idea of where that spend is actually happening. So labour part, which is the key trade for Cullis Rail, so where we have a lot of peak and trough workload coming up from all directions. So where we procure P-way, signalling at labourers, overlay, welding, so all that labour types sits in that big bar there. Also subcontract element, where we procure about 30% externally. The civils work, coping stone works, all the other works that Andrew mentioned earlier, dust suppression, and plant ROVs. So these are our key areas where we are focusing on. And I just also want to give everyone else in the call an opportunity to see that and where you can add value. We would definitely like to know in those areas, really. So if you could move on to next slide, please. I just want to quickly touch on how we engage with our suppliers. So obviously we go through a comprehensive tendering exercises and obviously bring them on board based on what we have agreed in our main contract with our client. Also, we measure our supplier performance. So we have created a Cullis Rail owned index where we monitor all our suppliers' performances, also provide feedback to them on a regular basis. So not just feedback, also we reward the top performing suppliers and also give constructive feedback to the suppliers who are not so performing very well and how they can improve their performance. So if you could move on to the next slide, please. So I just want to quickly touch on the success we had with our SMEs. So that's the picture you're seeing there right now. So our Cullis Rail Bristol team worked closely with our supply chain partner Proelectric and has designed a sustainable solution that now widely used across the market. And Cullis Rail also hugely benefited by this project. And if you probably would have witnessed it if you have seen our sites. So we have this lighting where we use solar generated power. And also it's very effective and achieve the what we expected it to do, really. So so that's one of the examples. I just want to show everyone how closely we are working together. Also, Pays Infrastructure joined our business recently and started off doing a small projects here and there, and they have a very good safety track record, which enable them to kind of become our long-term partner now, and they're working across the board. Yeah, it's just again another example. It doesn't, you know, if you're a small supplier, a big supplier, it doesn't really matter as long as you have the right culture and you know, and you can demonstrate your performance. There's always a space for you in our supply chain, really. And if you could move on to the next slide, please. So yeah, I just want to quickly touch upon how you can become a supplier to Cullis Rail. So there is various ways you can do it. One of them, you can use our website and contact us through our website, which is always the best avenue, and it directly links to my procurement team members, and they will be picking up and contacting you there and then. So again, we can't. I don't want to promise something that I can't do, but equally, if you come up with a solution that is sustainable and minimizing carbon footprint, mainly speaking, and also anything innovative related. So I just want to understand what they are and how you can do it, and how we can deliver the work more safer than how we do it today. Those are the areas that I would like to see from a new entrance, and you know, because we have a very well established supply chain. But that said, we're always looking to improve the ways and how we can help our customers and help ourselves, really. And as a quick, simple checklist. So as an SMEs, if you know, we always use RSQS as the main benchmark. So if you're accredited by RSQS and certified for the relevant activity code, that's the main tick box, and also holding the relevant insurances, and employment of local resources is one of the key item for us. So what we want to tend to avoid always the labourers or the resources to come to site from a long distance. So we want to avoid any such activity and always give the opportunity to the local resources. So we focus on this quite a lot and have various benefit for both the local suppliers and ourselves here. So obviously, if you want to deliver complex works, we want to understand your experience and other works examples that you may have. And if you can share those details to us, then would be very helpful. So standard stuff, compliance with Network Rail and Chorus Rail safety standards, and our T's and C's and main contract T's and C's, and obviously modern slavery and GDPR, we can't ignore them. So it's just a quick checklist for anyone who's willing to come on board and talk to us about supplying resources. So yeah, that's me really. And if anyone have any questions, I will take it later.
Fantastic, thank you. So really good to hear from you both about Colas Rail. So our next tier one is Amco Giffen, and I'm pleased to introduce Jason Marbeck, who's Strategy and Development Director. So welcome, Jason. Looking forward to hearing from you.
Thanks, Kate, and thanks to both me and Network Rail for the opportunity to present today. It's great. So yeah, Kate's introduced me, Jason Marbeck, Strategy and Development Director for Amco Giffen. I must say I've got a particular love for the Wales and Western region today, and if there's anyone on from either the Cross Country or Great Western Talks, a massive thank you, because true story, I actually left my suit carrier yesterday on a train bound for Plymouth. I emailed Cross Country last night, and I've got an email back from Great Western today saying my suit carrier's in Plymouth. So fantastic, thank you. What a wonderful region. In terms of Amco Giffen, on the next slide, what I thought I'd do is just give you all an introduction to Amco Giffen for those of you who don't know us. So we are a leading partner, and that's a really key word for us, partner, both in terms of the relationship with our client and of course with our supply chain, and particularly SMEs. The second line there, multidisciplinary engineering, construction and maintenance services, and you'll see that through the slides, because I wanted to give you a bit of a flavour in terms of what we're all about, because I'm sure many people, many SMEs on this call can connect in some way with our business in terms of the broad kind of scope that we deliver. And then the third line, across the transport, energy and environmental sectors. Some of you may already be working for other clients. We've got the Environment Agency or Canal and River Trust. Sometimes we can use those clients actually as an introduction to rail, and we can deliver multi-sector. In terms of context for us, well, we've been working in the infrastructure over 50 years, a very well-established business, annual turnover 300 million. And we directly employ 1,300 people. Now, some of you may well know us as a direct delivery organisation, and yes, that's true, but supply chain, as I'll show you in a moment, play a massive part in the teams that we form to deliver for our clients. And we operate nationally, providing local strength. And again, I'll illustrate that because some of you who've got multiple offices may well be interested in other regions too. But we'll talk in the main about Wales and Western today. And then on the next slide, I just wanted to illustrate some of those stats for you. So 34% of our turnover is spent through SMEs. That's in excess of 100 million. Probably reflects the kind of work type that we deliver and how important SMEs are to us. And that is a target for us that is going to be driven forward. Similar context, 65% of our supply chain spend is with SMEs. So, SMEs are vital to our delivery. We're absolutely committed to Network Rail's SME action plan, and we're involved with Network Rail's regional SME focus group. So, Ben mentioned it does a great job in Wales and Western. We're connected with Ben's forum, as many of you will already know. It was great in terms of the rail bodies. Patrick mentioned or had on his slide, RIA, Rail Forum Midlands and Seeker, which is great and quite right too. RIA, Lucy's chaired the call, and I was on a RIA SME forum last week that was fantastic. I realise not everyone on the call is RIA members. I'd hugely recommend it if you're not. Really kind of gives SMEs a platform to understand rail and understand who's who in rail. As does Rail Forum Midlands, very relevant to Wales and Western, I must say. And the other organisation, if you're not connected, I would recommend, is Seeker. So Bill Free's obviously the rail lead. Ed Evans is the lead in Wales, and we connect with South West as well. I've got to say, those three organisations work fantastically well together for us across the rail industry, all of us. We're Rail Supply Group members and signatories to the Work Pipeline Visibility Charter. So I'll share a link later so you can see our regularly updated pipeline. Also, on the back of that, we're actually involved in the Cabinet Office on rewriting or helping to rewrite the construction playbook, which has been mentioned several times today. So again, we really value the input of our SMEs, not just in terms of delivering work, but that kind of strategic input as well. So when we're contributing to the broad kind of strategy of the rail industry, we really welcome the view and want to represent the view of our supply chain and SMEs as well. You'll see us at RIN and other industry events, and please contact us on that. And very relevant, clearly, with the breakout sessions later, we are members of the Supply Chain Sustainability School. Okay. So in terms of Network Rail, particularly on the next slide, just wanted to illustrate before we drop into Wales and Western particularly, we are a trusted partner for Network Rail. We've listed there just a flavour of the many work types that we deliver. So again, please don't think we're just a civil engineering business. We are a buildings business, we're a geotech business, EMP, signalling, OLE, and tunnels as well. So just illustrating this point around specialisms that I'm sure many of you on the call might well identify with, that you can connect with Amco Giffen going forward. We are Network Rail's 4th largest supplier. If you look at the spend table there, a lot of those around us deliver the enhancement projects. Our work type tends to be maintenance, asset and renewal. And again, I know I keep repeating the point, but for a purpose that, again, I think that really fits the SME model and the approaches that many of you on this call could make to us and work with us. Just some statistics for you. So we delivered last year over 7,500 asset remits, 200 capital delivery projects. And in terms of the delivery of that, over 6,500 possessions, 3,500 line blocks and 3,000 isolations. So we're certainly out and about across the region through our 20 regional offices. And we do indeed deliver and have frameworks across all Network Rail's regions. Just before I go on to this, on the next slide, just before I go on to the specifics again around Wales and Western, picking up many of the points that have been made, if I could just have the next slide with the themes on it. It's really interesting. Stuart obviously raised quite rightly safety, diversity and efficiency. They are on this slide, and the purpose of the slide is that when you work with us as an SME, it's really key that we connect with the strategic objectives of our clients and our strategic objectives, and actually we all align to the very same strategic objectives, and we're really keen to help you do that. From a health and safety point of view, we have regular supplier engagement forums. Looking at the list, quite a few of you on this forum already come to those, so there's an open invitation there. Our supervisor academy is shared with our supply chain, and things like track worker safety and people plant interface are regularly discussed at those forums, and we welcome the view of our whole supply chain, particularly SMEs. From an environmental perspective, we are committed to a zero carbon strategy. On the back of a very successful trial in Wales at Crumlin Viaduct, we've now introduced a national policy of HVO fuel rollout, and we're very conscious of our carbon footprint of that and that of our supply chain. And I think it's been mentioned earlier, and again, we will give that support to help you understand yours and how we can work together on that going forward. Collaboration, so we are ISO 44001. We don't demand that of our supply chain. What we do demand and encourage from our supply chain are the behaviours that go with that. The partnership, I think, really great before to hear John mention, sponsorship, mentorship and partnership. I think they're 3 great terms, and certainly that's what we strive to do in our relationship with our SMEs. Social values key, another area where SMEs can really tap into local instances and initiatives on social value and bring those to the fore. Clearly not just for Amco Giffen, for all of us as representing the tier 1s here. EDI initiatives, well, we've signed up to the Women in Rail and RIA Charter, which is fantastic for giving real kind of impetus and focus on the agenda. I like what was said before, diversity is such a diverse agenda, and it absolutely is. And we're particularly proud though that Kaylee, one of our general operators in Western, is nominated for the Women in Rail Awards. Fantastic for Kaylee, and we wish her well with that. It's an achievement in itself to be nominated. One of the points I wanted to raise particularly with SMEs on the call is around innovation and R&D. We're really keen to help sponsor your thoughts. We put over £1 million last year into rail-related R&D. A lot of that was in partnership with the supply chain. We don't ask for exclusivity. It is about promoting it for the industry. So please, if you have those ideas that you might have been approaching Network Rail about, please let us know, and let's look at what we can do together and invest in bringing those ideas through. And then finally, I'll just collect up, speed, pace, minimum viable product, pounds in the ground. They're all really key themes as we move forward, and hopefully a lot of you understand those. If you don't understand them, we will absolutely. It's in all our interest to understand, pounds in the ground. How do we ensure that the money that's spent goes in the ground, that the periphery costs, we work together to drive the efficiencies that Stuart talked about earlier. And the final point on the bottom of this slide is around our values. So on the bottom of all our slides, and rooted in our business, are our spirit values. We demand those of ourselves and we demand those of our supply chain. And again, real encouragement to adopt those and work with us on them. And clearly, again, as Stuart mentioned, actually, challenge is part of collaboration, and we certainly welcome challenge from our supply chain to drive that forward. Just a final couple of slides from me. If we go over on Wales and Western specifically, our regional annual turnover 80 million, 250 directly employed staff, and we've got absolutely proven capability and capacity with the help of our supply chain. I'm not going to read all the frameworks. The slide deck will go out. You can see there, capital delivery in Wales, asset management across Wales, capital delivery and asset management across Western too, Wales minor signalling, and the 2 national telecoms and SIS frameworks. So there's a whole host of frameworks there that I'm sure many of you are identifying with and thinking, well, actually, we could offer something in that space. And I'm sure you could. And I'll share the contact details in a moment to encourage just that. My final slide before we go on to the contact details, if we just go over it, is just a flavour of the kind of things that we do in Wales and Western. So Blackbridge, it was around a flood resilience project. We, working with our supply chain and client, we actually lifted the bridge and approaches by a metre to project speed principles in 6 months. Crumlin Bridge, the bottom left there, that's to enable the forthcoming frequency enhancements in the Ebble Valley, really connecting the Ebble Valley with Cardiff and Newport and redoubling that particular section of the line. Top right for the Wales and Western region, Bristol East, great project, fantastic plaudits. We're really proud of the role that we played, which was really around a very varied scope around the enabling works package. It was beyond enabling works. You can see us there lifting in the major signalling gantry, and of course, that's really, that as a project demonstrates true collaboration. That's what we should be all about, a rail systems collaboration across the tier ones, the supply chain, in particular the specialist SMEs. And that project obviously improves capacity at Bristol Temple Meads. The final example is 7 tunnels, so the rigid overhead conductor system that we installed there. Another illustration of efficiency, that when we do something like that, and you as SMEs are with us on this, it's not just about installing that system, it's about understanding what else we can do. So while we were there, drainage projects, water management, grouting, repairs, all in one, all managed together, and great collaboration with our SMEs to enable that. So on my last slide, the contact details. Our team, our Wales and Western team, are on the call. So it's slightly kind of gone out of sync there, but anyway, the names are still pertinent. Mark Peters is our regional MD, Andy Crowley, our Ops Director for Wales, Gareth Armishaw, Ops Director for Western. Mine and also Mike Hardy's contact details are on there too, if you want to contact us, and our onboarding process is available, and we'll make it available to you. And very lastly, the website for more context, and of course our pipeline too. So thanks very much again for the opportunity to speak to you today.
Fantastic, thank you, Jason. And so we have one last tier 1 supplier for you today. So that is Dan App's Procurement Manager at Siemens Mobility. So Dan, welcome.
Thank you for that, and thank you very much to RIA and Network Rail for having me today. Really exciting to hear what the other tier 1s are up to. So if we could go to the second slide, please, Isabella. So I just thought I'd start by just saying a little bit about who we are. Next slide, please. So we're Siemens Mobility. I work as the Project Procurement Manager covering the Southern region. Wales and West portfolio is one of my portfolios to look after. I've also got a second hat, which is heading up the sustainable procurement efforts for the business. From the rail infrastructure part of the business. So we work under the umbrella of Siemens Mobility. So rail infrastructure is part of that business unit. And as part of that, there are several different facets of activity that are undertaken in that business unit. So start off with mainline and mass transit rail automation predominantly revolves around signaling-based technology. Then we've got railway control systems, which is very much focused around software and hardware to do with what the signaller sees sitting at the signalling desk. We have an electrification arm of the business, obviously targeted at electrifying the infrastructure for the new modern trains to come in and operate. We've got mobile and fixed telecoms. That would be from an onboard and asset kind of communication perspective. SCADA and station systems, so that's supervisory control and data acquisition, very techie term I know, and it's used to monitor and control physical processes to do with the infrastructure itself. And then finally, intermodal solutions. So that will be things like the digital services and solutions we offer. So trip planning, passenger communication, mobile e-ticketing, that kind of thing. Next slide, please, Isabella. So this just depicts what I've just talked about really, and is quite a nice graphic to show the areas that we have touch points around, whether it be infrastructure directly or the stations, or see the integrated control centres themselves. So I just thought I'd include that for a pictorial reference then. Next slide, please. So something very close to my heart, sustainable procurement. As I said earlier, I head this up for the rail infrastructure business, and SME development is one of the work streams that obviously sits under sustainable procurement, along with things we've already talked about today, like social value generation, EDI and that kind of thing. Just a little bit on this slide about how we engage with our supply chain, which is really key to our discussion today. So we utilise tools like Sell to Wales and Compete For to advertise opportunities to work with us. They're portals that are free to use to suppliers such as yourselves that you sign up to, and you can search for opportunities through the catalogue of available opportunities or by project to understand what's available. We also look at heat mapping to identify opportunities at project level. So I'll go into a little bit about heat mapping shortly, and that will be focused around more local procurement and SME engagement at project specific level as opposed to business level. We also attend and collaborate with our clients like Network Rail and Transport for Wales and RIA, of course, in events like this. It's really important that we get involved in these events, and we do enjoy going to meet our supply chain and potential new supply chain at these events. We've also got a partnership with the Supply Chain Sustainability School. So we've talked a little bit about that, the Supply Chain School today, and I know there's some breakout sessions where you can learn a little bit more about them. But in essence, they support with upskilling of SMEs in particular, and they offer a range of or source of information through an e-library they hold online particularly around sustainability type topics. They also run lunch and learn, workshops and specific events around these topics, which in turn help us as tier ones to meet obligations around sustainability for our clients, and obviously from a business perspective as well. So getting involved with them will allow you to learn a little bit more about those key topics if you don't have a lot of knowledge around them. Then of course there's the direct engagement route through our project buyers. So we have a dedicated project buyer who works on every project up and down the UK, and of course from myself as well, I'm happy to get direct contact, and my details are going to be at the end of the slides. So should you wish to in particular talk about the Wales and West portfolio, please feel free to reach out and have a chat with me about them directly. In terms of a little bit around our strategy to do with sustainable procurement and SME engagement, Stuart Calvert mentioned earlier about the flexibility and agility that SMEs offer Network Rail as an organisation. We would echo that, and we exactly feel the same. We feel that we are a large tech-based supplier, and what we need are flexible and agile businesses to support us in delivering the work for our clients. We know we're not the subject matter experts in those areas, and we rely on you as our supply chain to help us to deliver them. We've also just released, it's not in the public eye yet, but we are releasing it shortly, a sustainable procurement business strategy. And one of the dedicated work streams is around how we can further support SME development and local supplier spend, and also social enterprise engagement within our own organisation. We also have a supplier development program we're working with the Supply Chain Sustainability School on to develop that upskilling piece that I was just talking around around sustainability type topics. On the bottom left there, there's a snapshot of our spend profile for FY22, which for us, our financial year runs from October to October. So our current spend is 63 million to date, of which SME spend is 28 million. So 824 suppliers, 476 of which are SMEs. It equates to about 44 and a little bit % of our spend profile. We are looking, of course, always to improve that. There are challenges, of course, being a large tech organization, but again, you know, the strategy of dedicating work streams and our sustainable procurement drivers as a business will certainly help that. So just to note, on the last bit on this slide is there's a couple of upcoming opportunities to support us directly in the Wales and West portfolio. These are as listed there. So there's P-Way, track, design and install works, civil engineering highways, demolition works, including asbestos removal. That's going to be around signal box removal on the infrastructure itself, and then some indirect opportunities around supply of site consumables and cleaning equipment to know. So please do get in touch with me should you have interest in that. Next slide, please, Isabella. So this is an example of the heat mapping I was talking about just now on the previous slide that we conducted on mobilisation of one of the projects on the South Wales portfolio. So very simplistically, and it's in the bottom left there, it's a red, amber, green scale. And what we do is we take the project bill of materials as an example before mobilisation of the project, and we look at how we can diversify our spend profile to that of more SME or local based procurement activity then. So very simplistically here, as I said, you know, it's, the green would indicate where we are able to move that and have done to that of an SME local supplier. The orange would indicate where we are. We need to probably take some, need to understand if there's any challenges or there's potentially maybe I wouldn't say a barrier, but there will be some challenges around risks or PADS approvals that need to be considered first. It's not obviously saying that it's impossible, but that, you know, potentially for a new entrant to the market, there's considerations around that go over and above being able to supply to the rail industry. I know there's a breakout session to look at that in a bit more detail later. And red denotes where, unfortunately, on this occasion, we couldn't diversify that spend, and that would be due to single source supplier or technology-based support. One thing to note on the final piece, well, one of the final bits on this slide is that we do use, when we use our subcontractors, we do also ask them through obviously the commercial mechanism in our contract, and over and above those obligations with our business agreements to support local and SMEs when they come and work for us in the locality of the projects as well. So that all gets flowed down to them. The final part of this slide is on the far right there. That's just a spend profile on the same project to date, year to date, of what we've achieved in terms of diversifying that spend. So the orange denotes where it's an SME supplier that's supplied that commodity, and the bluey grey denotes where it's an SME and a local supplier to the project. So at the minute, it's about 1.5 million, which is a really good number for us. Next slide, please, Isabella. So just, I'm going to touch very quickly on the supplier onboarding process. I know we're kind of pushed a little bit for time. Next slide. So in terms of the process itself, it's very much driven by the business requirement, as you might expect, to support project delivery. The process itself is led by the project buyer, where they will undertake a competitive procurement exercise. A tender assessment is then undertaken, which is scored against key criteria such as health and safety, sustainability, of course, quality, those kind of things. And then, of course, as I've already mentioned, has been mentioned previously by the other tier ones, you know, risks coding and PADS approvals where deemed appropriate then to the type of supply. The awarded supplier will then be invited to join our supplier management portal, which is called SCM Star, if they are not already registered. So SCM Star is kind of a little graphic on the right hand side there. It's not dissimilar to Network Rail's Bravo tool that they utilize. So if you are familiar with that, it's quite straightforward to use. We've also got some key documentation that we need to sign up to. So things like the Siemens Code of Conduct, our Sustainable Procurement Policy, and the 4 steps to zero harm, health and safety obviously being a big part of that as well, which form mandatory part of the process. Next slide, please, Isabella. And the next one, this is the final one from me. You'll be glad to know. So a unique offering from us as well is that we have a separate arm to our business, Siemens Financial Services, which are tasked with financing SMEs in the UK. They can support with asset and equipment financing, tech financing, straightforward business to business lending solutions, investments, leasing, that kind of thing. If you are interested in understand a little bit more about what we have to offer in that regard, please refer to the link on the page there. It's at the bottom of the left hand side of the page. There's also a dedicated account manager called John Kennedy, who his details are on the slide there, so you can make contact with John and discuss the opportunity a little more with him, but he's really keen to speak to you on it. And that is, I think, the last slide from me. But please do feel free to get in touch should anything I've said today be of interest, or you'd like to discuss anything further.
Fantastic, thank you, Dan. And now if I could ask all our tier 1 speakers to turn their cameras on. We've got about 10 minutes for questions, which is not very long. So what I suggest is that Lucy Pryor as our SME Group Chair and Paul McSherry as our Vice Chair, I'm going to give you the chance to ask the first 2 questions.
Okay, so I'm going to ask a question that was raised by Rita Mastrovaltro Florin. Predominantly, this is a Network Rail engagement call, but as we're moving towards Great British Railway, we've got to be able to talk track and train. So I'm going to pick on Siemens and Colas as well, but from my perspective, how do we engage better with rolling stock OEMs, tier 1s? There are a whole load of ways in which we can do that. So, for example, in RIA, there is a rolling stock interest group, Rail Forum. I know that Ben Higgins is on the call today. They do a lot in relation to rolling stock as well. But from the Colas and Siemens point of view, is there anything you could recommend for people to find out how opportunity can cascade down?
If you want me to go first, so from Colas Rail, as I say, we don't obviously manufacture locomotives or anything of that nature. We operate them. So if it's in the operation scenario, then just make direct contact either with myself or through our freight team that are based at Rugby, and we can provide those details. So yeah, any opportunities where you're maintaining fleets and things like that, we've got the facility at Rugby. So by all means, get in contact and let us know what you can do, and if it's relating to freight haulage as opposed to passenger haulage, then by all means give us a call.
Thank you, Andrew.
Yes, so yeah, sorry, from our perspective, Lucy, we have, as probably a lot of people on the call are aware, just looking to open, I should say, the Goole facility. So there's going to be a number of opportunities of support there. I'm happy to field those at this time. I believe there is a dedicated website being published where you can get in touch with my counterparts in the rolling stock and customer services part of the business to understand what the opportunity looks like. But I'm happy to act as the intermediary for now, and I'll drop when I've got a chance. I'll drop the website address in the chat later on now.
It's worth adding, sorry, Kate, before we go on to the next question, it's worth adding as well that anybody that's not already in touch with the Department for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy, if you're interested in the rolling stock market, they actively look to link up local suppliers with foreign-owned, internationally owned train builders. So if you need their contact details, do let us know. Jason, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, thanks, Liz. It was only a quick one, really, just to say, absolutely, GBR brings such fantastic opportunity for us all. I'm going to name drop now. I was talking just yesterday to David Horn of LNER about how, the talks, Network Rail, and particularly, us as infrastructure deliverers can really connect. I'm sure Mark Hotwood would have a very similar view to David, that it's still a very untapped kind of opportunity for us. So I think, as GBR moves forward, I think as an industry, we really need to think more about how we connect across the piece, not just through the client, but more holistically, generally, who is the customer that we're actually all serving, and, how do we best kind of get together to do that collectively?
Thank you, Jason. So Paul, do you want to introduce yourself? And I don't know if you've got questions, or I know you've been keeping an eye on the chats as well.
Yeah, thank you. My name is Paul McSharry. As Lucy said, I'm the Vice Chair of the SME Group at RIA, and I'm also run an SME myself. We're involved in railway signalling, control systems, level crossings and the like. And I'm passionate about SMEs, along with Lucy and the great team from RIA who pushing the SME agenda. It's been fantastic today. Principally, I think, to see people like the Siemens and Namco, Giffen and those guys, all of you done some fantastic presentations, but key to me is the breakdown of your spend by SME. It's just fantastic for us as SMEs to see that. We've had Network Rail come to various sessions and mention their commitment to spend through SMEs and through their supply chain, but for you guys to be showing that to us is equally, well, in fact, it's probably even better, and I think it just shows the traction that is behind the SME agenda over the last few years, and even today, just watching those figures come out felt a bit like a seminal moment. Actually, it was wow, incredible. My question related to that though is to what extent, because we've asked Network Rail this question, to what extent you are monitored on that spend or set targets either pre or post tender. I guess maybe Dan. Or perhaps Jason could comment on that between your, one after the other. I think that's a key thing for us because, sorry to say, without any cynicism implied, figures look good on a PowerPoint, but to what extent is that tested in reality?
So Colas can probably go on that one. So as part of the Network Rail procurement commitments, we have to report on an annual basis our SME spend. We have to do it as a percentage. The figures we've given you, we also have to give it as a percentage of our turnover. The government has mandated that they would like to achieve a target of 33%, and we've only been actively reporting it for the last 2 years, but I'm happy to say that in both of those years we are above the government SME target for spend. So, but that doesn't say that we're now going to rest on our laurels because we've met the target. We will continue to look where we can improve and our performance, as I say. So we report on it on an annual basis. It gets uploaded to Network Rail. It also gets uploaded to the Network Rail supplier information database. And as part of our tendering process to Network Rail are now asking for us to reiterate that data within any pre-qualification that we provide. So yeah, so we are pretty open and transparent as to with Network Rail. We don't, I'm afraid, due to confidentiality, reveal the names and how much we spend with every supplier. But as I say, that information is shared with our clients. So.
Just to follow up on that before someone else comes in, then, so do they also monitor or do vertical slice sampling on a particular project? Does that ever happen?
Oh, I might have to Satya whether something can kick in on that one.
So what it is, naturally, whenever we go out for tender and procure resources, what I found was naturally SMEs fitting in that role quite nicely. And yes, we actually during the tendering process, we do know when we approach the suppliers who are the large companies, who are the small companies. So we segregate them on that basis. However, we don't score high because they are SMEs, because that will be unfair for the tendering process, because we have to be fair to the process, plus give opportunities for local suppliers, and that's where it's a very tricky area. But if you look at the figures, it's proven very clearly, out of 100% of our spend, we have 74% of our spend with SMEs, and that comes naturally. Plus, we also promote the behavior of employing the local suppliers and having the local resources in place, and that's where the SMEs comes on board really. So these are the other areas naturally promote this, but we don't score high just because they're SMEs.
Well, thank you, Satya. Jason, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, Paul, I think just to echo what's been said already, I mean, to answer your question directly, yes, absolutely. We do get measured regularly, both nationally and regionally. But you know what, we measure ourselves. It's a really key target for us. And I think the key point that's come out from everyone today, it isn't just about the spend either. It's the value that SMEs bring in terms of innovation. We're keen, as I said, as the others are, and I'm speaking on behalf of Tier 1s, not just Amco Giffen here, but, as an example, we do invest in R&D. We want to invest in R&D. I'll tell you that the vast majority of those ideas come from the SMEs. And I think what's been missing, to be quite honest with you, is forums like the forum that you guys have created today. And Lucy, the same happened last week. I've got to say, I thought last week was excellent. Engagement with Rail Forum Midlands and Seekers the same, and we need to all take those opportunities to get these open forums to the SMEs, to introduce all you to who we are and where we operate, and then we can connect. I think that's probably the missing kind of link, or has been the missing link, hopefully until today.
Yeah, I think you've all been providing good slides in your PowerPoints about how you can be accessed by SMEs, which is a question I was going to ask, but I don't need to, because you've largely put it all in your PowerPoint. So thank you very much. I think that's probably enough. The rest of the chat was largely chat, but it was very, very good chat from what I could see. Lucy, do you want to finish?
Yeah, in true form, I've been getting questions on text message and email as well. I feel like a TV presenter at times. I've had there's a very specific question in the chat that I'll try to get to after this. But this has been asked by a couple of people. So Network Rail in each of the Tier 1s, can you state one overriding benefit that you found from engaging more directly, Network Rail through your Tier 1s and then the Tier 1s, from engaging more directly with SMEs? What's been the overriding benefit of that for you? So if we go in the running order that you presented in, so we go first. Ooh, Chris.
I think for me, it's the innovation piece. We're working directly with the people that are carrying out the works, and I found, not just at Balfour Beatty, but previous companies I work for, when you engage with SMEs in particular, you're very close to the source of people who are looking at the innovation, and you can, the SMEs are keen to collaborate with other members of the supply chain as well. So it's a real positive that you're not dealing with huge organisations that take a long time to kind of catch up, and it's like turning an oil tanker sometimes, isn't it? The SMEs are a lot more, not flexible, but a lot better placed to jump on innovation and move it through their business and get it delivered on site.
Could we argue the way your outsourced R&D department? All right, next, Andrew, what's your overriding benefit?
Yeah, as I say, I'd echo the innovation really. Look at the one that we put in the slide pack. Pro Electric helped us do our diesel. We're one of the first to do diesel-free sites. So we had diesel-free sites. Working with Network Rail as part of the alliance as well. We also had we were one of the first sites to have the recycled sleepers. So that's where working with the supply chain and SMEs really brings things on. We deliver work, but we need the innovation. We need the different ideas. We need people to sort of shout quite loudly if you've got something that's really good and you think is really great. I think the perseverance from SMEs is absolutely paramount. As a Tier 1, we have an awful lot to deal with an awful lot of the time. And it's not that we're trying to avoid SMEs, because we see the great work. If you look at like Pro Electric that helped us on the diesel-free sites, but persevere with pushing your message and pushing what value and what savings you think you can do with us, because otherwise it's very easy to lose a conversation 1 week and then think that we're going to come back to it 3 weeks later. so much happens in 3 weeks. It may well that we think it's a great idea, but it's not. You just need to make sure that you persevere with your good ideas, and as I say, and keep in contact with some of us and just keep going. And it might not be today, it might not be in 6 months, but eventually the right project will come along where that application can be put on it, and then we can look at making it better. So that's my advice: perseverance.
Yeah, Jason.
Yeah, thanks, Lucy. I mean, for me, it's partnership. It was mentioned before by John. I think it's absolutely fundamental, because actually I think for partnership all the other things can spring, you know, whether it's safety, driving innovation, you know, and that's a partnership not just with SMEs but with our supply chain and clearly with our clients as well. You know, all of us on this call, I'm sure will agree, rail is a fantastic industry, you know, but to kind of really move forward, we've got to demonstrate that we're worthwhile investing in against other areas that the government could put the money in, and we are worthwhile investing in. And I think, you know, it is a true partnership. It's one rail industry. We need to come together, and I think the SMEs have got a massive role to play in the future of the industry in terms of, we all have, but the SMEs particularly, I think of a lot of the key ideas spring out from the SMEs, whether it's how we deliver, what the efficiencies are, how we move technology forward. I think we've all got a role to play in harnessing the ideas of the SMEs. So partnership, that's what it is across the industry for me.
Thank you. And Dan?
Yeah, I'm going to echo what Jason said, actually. Yeah, I think the collaboration is definitely the biggest benefit, and that we see as an organisation. As I said as part of my my slide deck, you know, the agility and flexibility that SMEs bring us. And although it looks, I guess, in comparison to the other tier ones, that we have a slightly lower percentage spend in terms of with our SME partners, I'd say that was mainly driven the fact that we are a tech business, you know, so it's very niche, very specialist. I think it would be a lot higher if it was more traditional in this market. But yeah, for me, definitely collaboration is the biggest benefit we see driven now.
Yeah, I'm mindful of time. We're running slightly over, so I'm going to draw that to a close there, because we need a quick comfort break before we go into the breakout rooms. But to wrap that all together, for people on the call who might not be established railway suppliers, partnership, collaboration, innovation. Once you're in the hashtag railway family, you actually don't get out of it either. So do persevere, exactly as Andrew says. So, Kate, on that note, are we heading to our break?
Fantastic, thank you. And also, if I could just do a quick plug for some of the RIA activities. So, you know, we will be at Railtex and we'll be at RIN, and we'll be supporting some of the, you know, unlocking innovation, you know, SME pitching, what innovations you have, and we're supporting Meet the Buyer activity there. But next, yeah, we've got a 5-minute break, so I suggest we rejoin this call at 10 past, if that's okay. And then we've got briefings on social value, product acceptance and accreditation. You'll only be able to join one of those breakout groups, but don't worry, we're going to video them and we will share the video links afterwards, so they'll all be available on YouTube and no doubt through RIA and Network Rail websites. So thank you to all our Tier 1 speakers. It's been a pleasure seeing you all today. Thank you for great discussion, and to Lucy and Paul for facilitating that Q&A, and hope to see you in a breakout room in about 5 minutes time. Thank you.
Thank you.
See you all in 5.